apologize, I'm sick. Alright. So what do Jason Giambi, Barry Bonds, and Marion Jones have in common? They have all taken steroids to extremely improve their performance within their sport. These athletes all took winning to the next level by not trusting their own body's abilities and turning to performance-enhancing drugs as a solution to their success. Although they have all received their 15 minutes of fame, they've also received their 15 minutes of shame. Today I want to describe the negative impact of steroids, anabolic steroids, on professional athletes. By the end of this speech, I will inform you on anabolic androgenic steroids as performance-enhancing drugs, the reason for which they are used, and examples of professional athletes that have used steroids to enhance their performance. I'd like to begin by introducing anabolic androgenic steroids. What are anabolic androgenic steroids? According to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, the original and legal use for AAS was to treat conditions that resulted from steroid hormone deficiency. Examples of this include delayed puberty and disease where lean muscle mass was lost, maybe from cancer, AIDS, diseases like that. AAS are made synthetically and include the male hormone testosterone. The word anabolic in AAS refers to the muscle building that results from using the drug. The androgenic part of AAS is associated with increased sexual male characteristics. The result of men using steroids can lead to baldness, development of breasts, shrinking of the testicles, reduced sperm count, and increased risk of prostate cancer. For women, enlargement of the clitoris, a deepened voice, facial hair, and male pattern baldness are just a few examples of what steroid use can lead to. Now that we have covered what AAS is, I will review an athlete's motives for resorting to steroids. What makes an athlete want to resort to steroids in order to be successful? An athlete's motivation to win is most commonly has to do with their level of competitiveness. According to Rainer Martins, a sports psychologist at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, an athlete's competitiveness should involve a process, and there are 4 stages to this process. Objective competitive situation. So an example would be one baseball player sees an athlete in his sport as either a threat or just competition. Subjective competitive situation would be that this athlete acknowledges his competition and wants to decide what he's going to do in order to, whether it's beat out that person to have a home run record, RBI record, for example, something like that. And his response in this case would be to resort to steroids because he feels that's the only way that he's going to overcome his opponent and come out on top. And his consequence, it can either be an outcome or a consequence. His consequence in this case could be that he is banned from playing in his sport, and it can also tarnish his reputation. Or an outcome could be that he beats out his opponent, gets the home run record, whatever it may be. Competitive athletes who have win at all costs attitudes are more prone to giving into the use of steroids in order to be victorious. The negatives, psychological, physiological effect, and even death does not seem to threaten them as long as victory is proclaimed. Hopefully now you all understand what steroids are and their side effects, as well as athletes' motives for their use. Let's finally take a look at professional athletes who admitted to taking steroids. Marion Jones is a female athlete who competed on the U.S. Olympic team in 2000 in Sydney, Australia. And she won 3 gold medals and 2 bronze medals. And she was also a guard for the WNBA team in the Tulsa Shot. Amy Shipley, a staff writer for the Washington Post, stated that at her hearing she pleaded guilty to 2 counts of lying to federal agents about her drug use and unrelated financial matter. Her former coach, Trevor Graham, gave her a substance that he said was the nutritional supplement flaxseed oil. In order to take it properly, she had to take 2 drops under her tongue. The drug turned out to be a substance called the clear, also known as as a steroid scientifically known as THG, or tetrahydrogesterone. Tetrahydrogesterone is a powerful anabolic steroid that many other track and field athletes were punished for using. THG came from the Bay Area Laboratory Cooperative, also commonly known as Balco, a nutritional supplement company in Burlingame, California. Another athlete, Jason Giambi, was a former Major League Baseball player who played for the Oakland A's, New York Yankees, and the Colorado Rockies. An article on ESPN stated that Giambi admitted to a federal grand jury that he did in fact take steroids and human growth hormones after having previously denied doing so. He used the same steroid, the Clear, provided by Balco. His connection came from Barry Bonds of the San Francisco Giants trainer, Greg Anderson. And in conclusion, I hope that I've helped you all have a better understanding towards the use of anabolic steroids and the athletes who use them. Steroids are not a substance that should be used or abused by athletes if they are not necessary to their health. Anabolic steroids are for the ill who rely on them to survive. However, professional athletes like the ones I've listed were all in, assuming that they would never get caught. I'd like to leave you all with something to think about. How competitive are you? How important is winning? And would you fall under the pressure of taking steroids if you were so close to winning 5 gold medals in the Summer Olympics? Thank you.
Raul, what did you think?
His topic area was steroids and the negative effects of steroids, anabolic steroids for people who use steroids. He had his strong points were, well, his transitions were really good. About he could have improved on not looking at the notes so much, and his visual aids kind of helped. Like the little pictures, I like those. They were like helped describe what he was saying. And overall, he did pretty good.
Okay. Well, I like the rhetorical question that you have at the beginning and then the examples to illustrate what the topic is. The topic's clearly identified. You have a very clear statement of your purpose. I thought that was good. There's also a very solid preview of the material, so that's strong also. You define the different types of steroids. I thought that was pretty well done, and you had a source on that. There was some stuff about all the negative effects of steroids that needed some sourcing, but everything else you were very consistent on doing that, and I thought that was solid. Sometimes I think you need to make it a little bit more engaging by giving us some examples or illustrations during the process instead of just listing information. For instance, at the end, when you're using the athletes that you mentioned at the beginning and telling their stories, I think that's the most compelling part of the speech because there's a consequence that's going on there. There are people, there are names that people are likely to be familiar with. But it often feels like we don't get the outcome of those sorts of things, like the consequence that you were talking about earlier. So Marion Jones, so what happened to her? She's obviously talking about this at some kind of a trial issue. And, well, where's the follow-through on, she had the 3 gold medals. Guess what? She doesn't have them anymore. She had all these endorsements. Guess what? She doesn't have them anymore. And, by the way, she went to prison because she took, financial stuff under, false pretenses, blah, 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 blah. And now where does her name stand in the status of athletes? She's right down here next to Mud. Mud and Dirt and Marion Jones. That's kind of, you need to make it a little bit more interesting like that. And it just feels like we're getting part of the example instead of all of it, and that would make it, I think, a lot more compelling. The visuals, they explain the concept that the one doctor's talking about that people go through in this process that's going to happen. I didn't really think that the first 2 were very clearly explained. The last 2 were easy to understand because they were pretty straightforward. So I think you needed a little bit more on the first 2. And that would have been one of those good things to say, let's imagine Jason Giambi in this situation trying to decide whether or not he's in that first stage. What's the term? The competitive status that you're looking at. Jason Giambi looks around and sees the other people on the team with him and says, well, there's this guy, and this guy, and you know what, they're better than I am. Or he sees that that guy got a contract that was worth $20 million and mine's only worth 70, or whatever it happens to be, and says, at some point he had to make the decision, what am I going to do to improve myself? Coaching is not enough, training is not enough, my talent is not enough, more work is not enough, I have to find something else. And that's when he went to this organization that's affiliated with Barry Bonds, you know, that laboratory, that sort of thing. I think you can kind of integrate those things together and make it a little bit more intriguing, and then we'll understand those points a little bit better. The visuals, like I said, were okay, but I think you're kind of expecting them to explain things, and they don't quite. You need to kind of supplement that. I appreciate that you came in today, even though you're not feeling well. We don't want you breathing in anybody's direction, so don't spread it around. Feel better yourself. Your delivery was fine. You're a little low-key, understandable. You're not feeling all that well. But your voice comes across well. You paced it very nicely. Sometimes you're reading a little bit more than you want to, but when you don't feel well, maybe that's just a crutch that people are going to depend on, and you won't feel that way next time. All right, feel better.